তো আসতেই হবে পুরো রাত্রে। রবিবার রাত্রে আজকে আসতেই হবে না, বিস্কুট করতে হতে বলে মনে হয় বিস্কুট করতে আমি 4টা চলে আসবো। চলে আসবো, অসুবিধা নেই, কিন্তু বাকি সব টেস্ট ডিসাইড করে যাবে। হ্যাঁ সেটা অবশ্যই ডাক্তার বলে দিয়েছি। এই তোর সোমবার কি ডিউটি আছে? আচ্ছা তোমার পেশেন্ট তুমি ভর্তি করেছো, কাউকে বলোনি? কালকে ভর্তি হয়ে, আরে ওটা ভর্তি কি করে হলো ভগবান জানে। কালকে ভর্তি হয়ে তার দাবি কবে অপারেশন হবে, কবে আমি বলেছি সপ্তাহখানেক, তো আমরা তো ওটাই চাইছি। স্যার কোর্সটা কোয়াক্টা আছে। হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ লং পুরো একটা ওটা কি কর হাই কর ঠিক আছে। হ্যালো
A very good afternoon everyone and a warm welcome. A very warm welcome indeed because the weather outside is very chilly. I thank the entire Department of Surgery for arranging this seminar on an update on acute pancreatitis. So we have 5 speakers today: Orpita, Orgoprabha, Aditi, Aishwarya and Dipanjan. And just like these 5 speakers, an ideal surgeon is also said to have 5 qualities: a lion's heart, horse's leg, eagle's eye, lady's finger, and camel's body. So you guys decide who is what. Now jokes apart, now let's come into the actual boring part. Acute pancreatitis, a disease very common in the young, middle-aged as well as elderly, alcoholics and non-alcoholics, and overall we encounter this disease in all the wards in our hospital, like the medicine or the gynecology and obstetrical wards. So an update in this topic is not only needed for academic purpose but also for at the end of the lecture there will be a questionnaire session, and questions will be invited from both the judges as well as the audience. And today, a very humble submission to Dr. Thank you, sir, for your presence to grace this occasion. Thank you. So let's start the seminar today. I would like.
Knowing the topic of today's CME, that is an update of acute pancreatitis, and I will be discussing the introduction, etiology and the pathogenesis. Acute pancreatitis is a multi-system and multidisciplinary disorder commonly encountered in all the subjects, whether medicine, gynecology, surgery, and even in the pediatrics age group. It is an inflammation of the pancreas associated with little or no fibrosis of the gland. It ranges from mild self-limiting inflammation to a critical disease, which may be of infected pancreatic necrosis, systemic inflammatory response syndrome, and multi-organ dysfunction syndrome, and all these 3 are life-threatening. Now we have to know that what is the occurrence rate of this disease. Comparing the world scenario with the Indian scenario, in the USA, the incidence rate is 49.3 per 1 lakh population per year, whereas in India, it is slightly high. It is 50 per 1 lakh population per year. Now, how this acute pancreatitis can be classified? Based on severity, it is classified into mild, moderate, severe and critical, where critical acute pancreatitis is characterized by features of persistent organ failure and infected pancreatic necrosis. Now, what are the causative agents behind this deadly disease? The first comes the metabolic causes, where the most important one being the alcohol drinking, followed by hyperlipoproteinemia, hypercalcemia, some drugs, genetic factors, and scorpion venom. The next one being the mechanical causes, and the first place being occupied by cholelithiasis. That
95%. Other than its easy availability, cost effectiveness and portability, it can diagnose acute pancreatitis when pancreatic enzymes and LFT are positive with positive USG findings with 97% sensitivity and completely 100% specificity. But important demerits being, it has got obstruction of view may happen due to presence of paralytic areas or intra-abdominal fluid or gas contained. Secondly, it can diagnose cholelithiasis with only 50% sensitivity. A straight extra-abdominal needed posture is mostly done to rule out any hollow viscous perforation. Other than this, some associated features like paralytic areas can be detected with multiple air fluid levels, and colonic spasm may be detected with colonic cutoff sign. Now, when USG and X-ray are not confirmatory, our diagnosis of choice is CT scan of abdomen. Now, two plates of CT scan of a patient of normal abdomen and acute pancreatitis have been compared. In an acute pancreatitis case, the pancreas is shown to be bulky with shaggy margin. There is presence of peripancreatic fluid collection, and also there is fatty infiltration of the peripancreatic fat tissue. Let's see some other pictures too. In acute interstitial edematous pancreatitis, there is presence of a shaggy and bulky pancreas without any evidence of necrosis and presence of acute peripancreatic fluid collection. In CCT abdomen, when a dye is intravenously injected, it is seen that a normal pancreas increases to more than 50 Hounsfield unit, whereas a necrosed pancreas shows non-enhancement and increases less than 50 Hounsfield unit, which is diagnostic for acute necrotizing pancreatitis. And thirdly, in acute emphysematous pancreatitis, which is a variant of acute necrotizing pancreatitis, presence of gas shadows intrapancreatic and peripancreatic areas due to gas producing bacteria. Now, of the merits, it has got 100% sensitivity after 4th day. Other than its better delineation and wide ability, CT guided efficacy is an important advantage of CT scan, as it can differentiate sterile and non-sterile pancreatic collection with almost 96% sensitivity and 99% specificity. But the demerits being, it's less sensitive before 24 hours, and secondly, contrast enhanced CT is contraindicated in renal failure as the dye used is nephrotoxic. Now, next investigation of choice is MRCP, the indication being only unexplained or recurrent pancreatitis. The merits being, it can be used in a patient with renal failure, as gadolinium, the dye used here, is non-nephrotoxic, and it can diagnose cholelithiasis with 90% sensitivity and 95% specificity. But the important demerit being, it cannot be used in a patient having metallic implant within the body. Now, about ERCP, it is to be said that on diagnostic purpose only, ERCP has no role, as my previous speaker has already said that ERCP increases the gland manipulation and increases the chance of acute pancreatitis. And the last one, EUS or endoscopic ultrasound, is indicated only when MRCP is not diagnostic or ERCP is not indicated. Now, it is to be noted that only confirmation of diagnosis is not adequate for a patient, as the assessment of severity is to be made hand by hand. So, on working purpose, we have got two formula, one is Ransom scoring and second is modified Glasgow scoring, which can assess the severity for at least 48 hours of presentation. On Ransom scoring, we have criteria on gallstone and non-gallstone pancreatitis differentiated into at admission and during the initial 48 hours. They have got different parameters, each scoring 1. A score of more than 3 gives us a diagnosis of severe pancreatitis with a sensitivity of 75% and specificity of 78%. And modified Glasgow scoring is presented with a mnemonic again pancreas. They have total of 8 criteria, each scoring 1. A score of more than 3 gives us a diagnosis of severe pancreatitis. We have got some other markers too, other than phospholipase and trypsin. Trypsinogen activation peptide has already been mentioned. In an acute case, the best severity marker is interleukin 6 and interleukin 8. Pancreatitis associated proteins CRP and procalcitonin are used in chronic cases, and plasma diamond is better used when organ failure is suspected. Now, the last part for diagnosis of complications, this part will be described in details by my next speaker. Let's say it is in a brief review. CT scan of abdomen gives us the diagnosis of pancreatic cirrhosis, whereas pancreatic abscess, pancreatic necrosis, pancreatic phlegmon, and pancreatic non-specific STD changes mimicking acute MI. Investigations for DIC may be done. GI endoscopy may give us a diagnosis of peptic or urinary ulcer. Serum urea creatinine detects acute renal failure, and sugar, calcium and albumin gives us a diagnosis of some other complications. Now let's summarize all this.
Is more means it uses more number of variables, and therefore it's more specific and better.
Okay, thank you very much.
So one question, you want at all or not, but it bored me a lot of throughout my career. Okay, it is too much boring in your entire career. But one thing you say, that if you are posted in the most remote corner of the country, which can highly is feasible after the completion, immediate completion of your career, whether you are in a government setup or even if you in a corporate, they usually nowadays send the apprentice to outreach centers in the remotest areas. When will you suspect pancreatitis in a case of acute abdomen? Don't have anything in your hand. When will you suspect acute pancreatitis?
From the history and clinical feature itself, it is clinically possible to diagnose acute pancreatitis more or less. But to confirm a diagnosis, we will obviously need some investigations.
One thing you undergraduates keep in mind, pancreatitis diagnosis is a negative thinking. When you can't match it with anything else, it is a case of acute pancreatitis in acute pancreatitis. Am I wrong, Raman?
By
exclusion of all the other causes. In case of acute abdomen, when you can exclude other causes, common causes.
So the problem is it is not diagnosis, it is the stratification or severity. That cannot be done in peripheral setup.
No, suspicion of diagnosis
Suspicion
of
is
pancreatitis.
possible by USG also.
No, when in the remotest corner, where any gadgetary help are not available.
in most of the remote corner USG are available.
USG is nowadays available.
In most of the USG are available in the remotest area. The night that is not thick.
talked about blood glucose.
কোশ্চেনটা খুব রিলেভেন্ট এবং প্র্যাকটিক্যালি ইমপ্লিমেন্টেশন খুব
হ্যাঁ
ভালো
সেটা
কারণ
এক্সক্লুশনটা
আমাদের এই মেডিকেল কলেজে
Can you modify the blood glucose level? Any modification regarding the blood glucose level. Say blood glucose level of 180. Can you do you want to specify or describe some additional factors? Blood glucose level of 180. When is it more indicative of severity? Any patient 180, you call it severe blood glucose. Does it fall into the criteria of severity?
So with only one criteria we cannot diagnose.
If you focus on that, other factors are matching. Regarding if that is a factor, that is a point. Blood glucose 180. You can find it. Suppose the patient is diabetic. In that case, will 180 be a marker of severity?
No.
So,
Sir,
I
think there is no guideline. There is no such.
Sir, only just one point to add to your answer is, sir, there is single value in a diabetic because all of these criteria that she has spoken around are all mathematically derived derivatives in which people have read about many issues, even in diabetics and non-diabetic, and the issue is about a hyperglycemia. The more amount of the glucose, even in a diabetic, who should be well controlled, in a stressful situation should say that the disease is progressing towards more severity. So that means that the issue is about accumulating all. It is not about what there are, what she has told, and also is that there are some independent parameters. Example say a hematocrit, example say CRP. A single blood glucose is not to be read in a diabetic or a non-diabetic, it is to be combined with other parameters. Example as in their answer.
now, I have no experience of
No, sir, that is
experience.
okay.
But one line I have, it is written in Love Bailey that hyperglycemia in a non-diabetic is more is of more prognosis.
That is applicable for all of the
Not only acute pancreatitis, in all emergency settings. Next.
Everybody, and thanks to Aditi. Till now, there have been a lot of discussions regarding the agonies of acute pancreatitis. But whatever problem we face, we have to deal with it. So here I am, Aishwarya Bhattacharya, to discuss about the management of acute pancreatitis. Frequent interruptions. Acute pancreatitis is a disease with wide spectrum of outcome, including significant morbidity and mortality rates. The mortality rate in mild cases may be around 1%, while in untreated severe acute pancreatitis, it may even range from 10 to 30%. Though a number of clinical trials have been made since ages for the proper management of acute pancreatitis, there have been significant improvements since the year 2002. A collaboration was undertaken between IAP and APA for the time-to-time revision of the treatment protocols based on strong evidences and recommendations. While dealing with the patient of acute pancreatitis, we should go for a three-dimensional approach that comprises of risk factor stratification, risk factor assessment, and monitoring response to the initial therapy. This risk factor stratification is done by the assessment of severity, presence or absence of definitive risk factors, presence of SIRS, and routine laboratory values. These are used for tailoring the management strategies according to the patient's need, such as treating the mild cases in general setting and shifting the severe cases to the ICU setting. Our main aim is to prevent and combat the progression towards multi-organ failure, in which non-operative management is the mainstay. The management of acute pancreatitis is dependent on the following cardinal principles: fluid resuscitation, nutritional support, symptomatic treatment, management of metabolic complications, prophylactic antibiotic coverage, monitoring and reassessment, role of ERCP, and role of surgery. Fluid resuscitation is the first, foremost, and the most important step while treating a patient of acute pancreatitis. Our approach should be of aggressive fluid resuscitation with isotonic crystalloid solutions, preferably ringer-lactate, at a rate of 250 to 500 ml per hour. Specific contraindications are pre-existing cardiovascular or renal comorbidities in which the total amount of fluid to be infused should be titrated according to the blood urea nitrogen. In cases of severe volume depletion, as evident clinically by hypotension, tachycardia, etc., the rate should be increased to 20 ml per hour for the first 30 minutes and then followed at a rate of 3 ml per kg per hour for the next 8 to 12 hours. The resuscitation goals as suggested by IAP are decreasing the heart rate, maintaining the mean arterial pressure, increasing the urine output, and lowering the hematocrit value to a range of 35 to 44%. This resuscitation with adequate amount of fluid is mostly beneficial within the first 12 to 24 hours of the disease progression. Adequate fluid replenishment prevents the hypovolemic shock that occurs in the early inflammatory phase, thus preventing pancreatic necrosis, acute renal insufficiency, and multiple organ failure, which at the end of the day changes the prognosis to a far more better way. Maintenance of proper nutrition is of immense value in any patient with any kind of severe disease, as adequate and proper nutrition prevents the inflammatory process, thus halts the disease progression and helps in early recovery of a patient. There are different schools of thoughts regarding the appropriate mode of nutrition in acute pancreatitis, such as continuation of
shown an algorithm of the investigations and the treatment of pseudocyst. A pseudocyst more than 6 cm, we first look whether it is asymptomatic or symptomatic, or whether it is enlarging or not. Asymptomatic one, not enlarging, we should just wait and watch. A symptomatic pseudocyst enlarging
one, we should perform an ERCP to see the ductal anatomy. If there is a communication present, we go for an endoscopic transpapillary stain. If a stricture is present, like in type 3 pancreatic pseudocyst, we go for an endoscopic internal drainage. Following of both the two may lead to surgical internal drainage with or without resection, and in presence of normal ductal anatomy, we go for a radiology external percutaneous drainage. In case of infected pseudocyst, we go for a percutaneous drainage. The treatment approaches for pancreatic pseudocyst are many, of which cystogastrostomy deserves special mention. While comparing drainage versus resection, it is found that drainage procedures are preferred over resection, of which internal drainage having half complications and mortality rates that of external drainage. Now the process of cystogastrostomy, I will just mention in short as very few people will understand about this one. This process is ideal when pseudocyst is adherent to the posterior stomach and indenting it. What happens? We do a longitudinal anterior gastrostomy and we reach the posterior stomach wall and find the pseudocyst indenting on it. We aspirate the material through a needle and finally we evacuate the material out of the pseudocyst. Finally, disc is made along with the stomach wall and the subjacent pseudocyst wall of more than 2 cm in diameter, and then sutures are placed along the edges to minimize the risk of edge bleeding, and finally the anterior gastrostomy is closed. Now coming to the pancreatic necrosis, approximately 20% of the patients with acute pancreatitis develop pancreatic necrosis, out of which 25 to 70% develop infected necrosis. In the early or vasoactive phase, which occurs in the first week, there is release of inflammatory mediators that leads to the pathogenesis of renal, cardiovascular and respiratory complications. In the late or septic phase, which happens usually 3 to 4 weeks later, SARS and MORS set in following infected pancreatic necrosis. Now, in inflammatory injury that happens in the first 48 to 72 hours leads to mucosal ischemia and reperfusion injury that leads to bacterial overgrowth due to local impairment of immunity. Also, mucosal ischemia increases the intestinal permeability in the first 72 hours of onset, which reaches its peak after 1 week. Moreover, less common, distal infection from pneumonia, vascular and urinary tract infection associated with central lines and catheter, along with direct contamination after surgery or interventional procedures like ERCP may lead to necrosis infection. Now the fate. Foci of lesion less than 1 cm resolve spontaneously. Larger foci of 2 to 4 cm are demarcated by macrophages that slowly phagocytose the necrotic material, leaving the inner content liquid. More larger foci of 5 cm and more, macrophages which are rich in hemosiderin coupled with other immune cells form a thin layer of granulation tissue by 10 to 20 days of disease onset. After 20 to 30 days, that becomes a fibrous capsule which increases in thickness. Over time, necrotic areas slowly resolve and are replaced by fibrotic scar tissue, the process known as necrosis-fibrosis sequence. Now, there are 5 routes by which bacteria are thought to enter our necrosis: hematogenous, transpapillary reflux of duodenal content, translocation of intestinal bacteria and toxin, reflux of bacteriobilia, and transperitoneal spread.